So good evening, everybody. Welcome into our first business roundtable of the fall season. We're so glad to have you here with us. Tonight's business roundtable is our first as a webinar. We invite you to use the chat and the Q&A to type in your questions. We welcome them throughout the presentation. Each month, we host a business roundtable focusing on a local business owned by a person of color in Howard County. The owner shares the experiences and challenges they face as a local business owner, and you can learn what it takes to start your own successful business. The discussion is moderated tonight by Nat Alston, chair and founder of the Ujamaa Business Roundtable. The Business Roundtable normally meets on the fourth Tuesday of the month, so we look forward to having you join us next month as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Nat to introduce our guests tonight, and we're so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, Nancy, and thank you all that are participating at our webinar. As Nancy mentioned, our first webinar for the fall. So again, thank you. Want to welcome you. And I also want to thank Howard County Library for their generous support and collaboration to make this showcase possible. So as Nancy mentioned, this is our kickoff for the fall. Like many shows, they always have a hiatus during the summer, and now we're launching it in the fall. And our guest tonight is a good friend, a member of our Business Roundtable. He is Frederick McCullough, president and founder of the Advanced Strategy Consultant. Good afternoon or good evening, Fred.
Good afternoon, Nat and Nancy. Also, I want to just first of all say thank you to the Howard County Library System for having this. I'm super excited to be a part of the kickoff of the fall series. That's also exciting. And for the listeners and participants, I have a great deal of respect for this man, Nat Alston, who is very charismatic, but also very influential in the business community throughout Howard County, throughout the state of Maryland, and also in other states across the country. So very excited to be a part of this. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, Frederick, for being a part of our business showcase and also being a member of our Business Roundtable. So to kick it off, really, I'm extremely excited about your business and what you do. And to really start our question off, Advanced Strategy Consultant. How did you come up with the name? And then how did you get started?
Yeah, so the name is probably not as exciting as you might think, but advancement is something that is associated with every aspect of what we do. And I know we'll probably get into more of what we do as a company, but when you think about a range of services that we provide to customers, almost invariably, all customers want to advance, whether it's in profitability, reaching customers, helping for a cause, whatever it is, it's associated with advancement. And that's really at the core of what we try to do. We help our customers to advance in various ways and to become better at whatever it is they're doing. So that's a part of the name. The strategy is associated with how do you do that? How do you go about it? Whether it's in technology, whether it's process related or policy, there's a strategy to realizing that advancement. And that's where those two come together. It's advancement strategy, and we provide consulting services as well as products. But that was the inception of it, was around advancing and creating advancement for clients.
Great, great. Well, that's great to know. And you mentioned two things that we really want you to highlight now.
Sure.
What are some of the services as well as the products that you offer to the business community? Yeah.
So we have really kind of two divisions of services, some that target mid-size businesses, commercial businesses, and we provide what we call IT managed services. Managed services basically just means we take the worry out of it. So we manage the process from end to end, things including helping to do storage and backup for files on your computer systems, cloud to cloud backup if you're using Microsoft 365 or Google Cloud or whatever the case may be. And things like doing cyber security. So improving cyber protection, defending against cyber threats, and doing things like helping customers to adhere to NIST policies or HIPAA compliance, whether it's for healthcare providers or financial services companies, for example. The other division of services are more the advisory services and performance, where we help customers do things like advanced data analytics, where let's say an organization, like even the library system, for example, multiple locations, access to public, things like that, where they would want to know where the demographics of, what are the demographics, how they change, how to attract people to the library system, for example. We're able to do advanced analytics and do predictions on how things might change over time, or to plot those kinds of things on a geographical map or a dashboard, things like that. So we have a range of services that are kind of strategic and advisory. And then we also have the managed services, like I mentioned, the IT managed services.
Wow, that is extensive in here. So with all that,
Yeah.
the first question, or maybe not the first on this,
Okay.
how did you get started? What brought this to bear? I mean, your background, tell us a little bit about your background, and was that background the impetus for you to start your company?
Sure, that's a great question. Yes, that was related. So, I mean, as far as entrepreneurship goes and business ownership, that's been something that has been in my veins since I was a young person. I don't know if it was my father, who was also an entrepreneur. He started an early stage. It was called distance learning at the time. I think now you would call it online learning. It was kind of before that was a thing, so to speak. My mother was an educator and counselor, but then moved into real estate. Ultimately, actually, she retired, which is kind of entrepreneurial. So I always heard positive things about being an entrepreneur, and that was something that was always exciting to me. I went into the Meyerhoff program at UMBC, as some of you may be familiar with, and it's a very prestigious program in undergraduate university for. It was designed at the time specifically for people to get their PhDs in engineering. And they said to me, we'll admit you to this program. We want you to get a PhD. I said, no, I think I'm going to go into business. So I'm probably not going to go down that path. So I knew, it's a long way of saying I knew at an early age that was something I wanted to do. And advancement strategy is not my first entrepreneurial venture. So just out of undergraduate school, I formed a software development company with a friend of mine from MIT, who had graduated from MIT. He's local to Columbia. And we did some website development, which was, there really weren't tools at that time even to do website development. So that was another building block. I went on from there to work with some large businesses, brand names you would know, IBM, Booz Allen, et cetera, and gained some experience in various areas. I went from there to graduate school. I went to Columbia University in New York City, which is very financially oriented. So I worked in Wall Street and picked up some skills there, just kind of following my interest. And I'm saying all these things because they really represented building blocks in terms of, I can look back in hindsight and say, all of those elements were important to what advancement strategy became and why I started it. I left, most recently, I left working for a large business, and I developed some relationships there that ultimately, when I left that business, I helped those businesses fill a need. What they needed was, they were also contracting businesses that had clients. What they needed was help in growing those businesses. And so they looked to me to help them fill that void, and that's what I did. They became two of my first clients as advancement strategy, and that helped kind of get us off the ground.
Wow. So when did all this start? How long have you been in business?
We've been in business approaching 5 years. So it's a nice milestone, and it's been an awesome journey. We've grown from just me as an individual to doing, 7 figures in revenue, and it's been a exciting and at times tumultuous ride. So that's one thing that entrepreneurs should recognize. It's a journey full of ups and downs, but it can be some of the most rewarding work you can do.
Well, I'm curious when you say it's been a tumultuous journey, full of ups and downs.
Yeah.
What are some of the downs that you may have faced that you can share that would be applicable to our panelists and our attendees here if they're thinking about a business or they have a business right now?
Sure. And when I say ups and downs, that's not to be sort of fatalistic or dramatic. But what I mean by that really is in early stage businesses or startup companies, you feel the highs and the lows more so, I think, than being in a larger organization. So, for example, in a large business like a 5, 10, or $100 billion company, if you lose a contract, you don't really feel that in a major way. Or if you have an individual employee issue, you don't necessarily feel that in the same way. So there's more exuberance in the wins and the victories and the positive things, but you also feel it more, I think, when you have some of the what I call negative things, where you may have an employee that doesn't perform, or let's say you have an employee that does something unethical, wants to take something, steal from the business, or things like that. All of those kinds of things happen in businesses, both large and small. But I would argue you feel it more, and in some ways it may be more personal as a business owner or part of a small business.
Great, great, great. If you don't mind, we've got a question coming from Jay. Jay's got his hand up. So Jay, your question to Frederick.
Is it in the chat? Should I open the chat?
Yeah, he's in the chat. Let me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jay. Let me.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay. You're on.
Frederick, how we doing?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you, Jay?
Good, good, good. I was wondering for this particular venture, because I'm familiar with some of your other ones. What were some of the early hurdles you overcame to get started and get that traction where you are now?
Yeah. So like I said, one of the things that helped out was some of the relationships that I developed from a prior company, working at a big firm. And it was kind of unanticipated that those would necessarily become clients, but they did become clients early on, and that helped to have revenue in the door from the early stages. Some other challenges related to what Nat had just asked about. Really thinking about what was the operating model going to be? What was the structure going to be?
Mm-hmm.
What to focus on? Because having worked in many different areas, in finance, in government, in international, in IT, in software, which services to focus on and which target markets was a question. Also, competition. So having these services in the commercial market, we were finding ourselves competing head to head with the Accentures, the Booz Allens, the Deloittes of the world, and how to position against those and win. And not to say we did it all the time, but we did in certain cases. We were able to match up against them and offer some senior talent at a relatively lower price than some of those competitors. And so that's something. You asked about early hurdles and thinking what other hurdles were there. Just kind of the logistics and the planning of what equipment do we need? Will we get an office or not? How to market online and to present in a way that we don't just look like we're a 2-person company when we were, or a 3-person company when we were, or 1-person company when it was just me. Those kinds of things. And yeah, those are some of the hurdles, but through relationships, continuing to invest in relationships, not giving up, keeping faith. Those are some of the things that helped us push through. And it's an ongoing journey. As you grow, as a business grows, it continues to face challenges. So it's not something that goes away.
You mentioned, back to Jay's question again, the hurdles and all. 5 years out there, you started out by yourself.
Yeah.
How did you convince people? And I'm going to segue a little bit and say, well, how many people do you have presently working for you? But how did you convince your fellow employees, your co-workers now to sign on with your vision and your dream?
Good question. Some of it, people have different spiritual beliefs, but some of it I say, by the grace of God, how did these initial customers come? I attribute some of it to work ethic and some to, being a quote unquote good person. But I think in terms of the vision and what people like about the vision, or some of the things that I know, are that advancement strategy offers a creative freedom for people to be able to bring their ideas to the table, to be able to pursue clients and client paths with their own intelligence. So where people might come from an IBM, or I shouldn't call out any particular company, but really any very large organization, often you'll have more of a focus in a particular lane, and you cannot, 1 year do one thing and then in the same year do something fairly different, where we have that flexibility and latitude to do that. I think also some people knew me already, or knew others that knew me, and had some faith in my ability to be consistent, to deliver on what I said I would do and things like that. And so I think some of those things help with people. I think as a leader, I try to listen and really take input and feedback from employees. I think that's something that has helped retain people that were attracted to the vision.
Great, great. Edward had a question in the chat, and he said, Frederick, what was more important in building your business, social capital or financial capital? Very good question. Thank you, Edward, for that question.
Thanks, Ed. And I'll say they're both important. And Nat asked about, well, how did we get off the ground? There was some financial capital involved that was initially my own money, and doing things as simple as incorporating, paying the state registration fee, investing in hardware, software, subscriptions for databases, and industry journals and things like that. So that did take some investment capital. But the social capital is highly important. And Ed is an expert in social capital, so I'll make a plug for him there. And if you need some advice and some guidance in social capital, he's your man, so to speak, for that. But social capital, as I mentioned, has been vitally important in terms of developing business and in terms of attracting people to work for the business. As far as business development goes, I'll say probably 90+% of our work has come through at least direct or indirect contact with someone that we already knew one way or another, whether it's like a direct referral or someone who, in other words, we didn't go in completely cold and blind to the customers that actually have purchased our products and services. So social capital, immensely important there, making connections with people in a network and getting to know people that are not normally a part of your network, extending beyond your immediate network. Great question.
So you would say to any business owner, they've got to be more of that extrovert than that introvert in terms of that social capital.
Well, you have to act like an extrovert, meaning you can. I remember this phrase. It had to do with dating a girl, and there was someone who gave this advice, and they said, "You can be shy, but just ask shyly," meaning you still have to ask. It's okay if you ask shyly, but you still have to ask.
You still have to ask. Okay.
Yeah. So in that
That's
regard,
pretty good.
you got to be extroverted. You've got to reach out to people. It doesn't matter if you're shy or what have you, but you can't operate in a vacuum and think that business is just going to come to you. That adage of build it and they will come. Well, I wouldn't rely on that. That would not be my advice to people starting businesses. I'd say go out and get it.
Got to go and get it. I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Edward mentioned too when you talk about social capital.
Sure.
In the social capital, how do you formulate that social capital or quantify that, shall I say, in the area of defining your customers? Who would be the, let's say, the top 3 or 4 customers, or shall we say, business entities that you're going after, or that you went after possibly in the earlier stages of your business, and have you remained that in these 5 years that have progressed since you've been in business?
Yeah, good question. There's been some evolution, and depending on, I'm sort of answering this as far as our business, and also maybe in terms of advice to others. The consulting and contracting businesses do change, and there are trends and there are macroeconomic factors and various things that contribute to which customers may be most viable at any point in time. So from that perspective, I think it's advantageous to be flexible, to be adaptable, and be able to shift as market demand shifts. And so for our business, things have changed, right? Dead smack in the middle, COVID hit. That's a major change globally. And that alone did impact some of the way that we have done business and some of our target customers. But again, we started with relationships. As I mentioned, the way that I was able to start Advancement Strategy began with 2 of the relationships that I developed at my previous company. That's social capital. Fast forward, I brought a couple of people on board, and they also had their own networks. And we helped to sort of nurture those relationships and get some business out of those relationships. And it can be reciprocal, where we get business, provide service, and also help provide that social connection for those customers to have other relationships with other vendors, with other whatever may be beneficial to them. So to also tag on to what I think you were asking about as far as, how is the customer base, has it remained static or has it changed? It has changed to some degree. And the middle market customers that I had mentioned kind of earlier in the conversation, those are companies that are not the big Fortune 500 companies that we started with. Those are mid-size or even larger small businesses that we're providing fully outsourced services, again, where we handle things from beginning to end and just take the burden off of those customers altogether, and they use our services as a subscription-based service. So again, that's an example, subscription-based cybersecurity protection to help them avoid one of the major, one of the three major mistakes that companies make are not having adequate backup and storage, not complying with NIST and HIPAA regulations particularly for healthcare providers, includes dentists, and not having adequate cyber protection for their network appliances, their cloud devices, their personal computers, etc. So what we do is provide those managed services to those customers. That was something that evolved. That was not a part of our target market at inception.
Great, got it. Okay, you mentioned you evolved, and then all of a sudden, all of us that are in business had the same challenge. COVID hit.
COVID.
What did you learn, and really, how did the pandemic really affect your business? And then again, as I just mentioned, what did you learn coming out of it?
Yeah. So COVID, one of the major things, COVID affected large business in a big way. So right before COVID, we had won a contract that was supposed to operate in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. Okay. And we did win that contract and worked on it for probably about 8 months, but that was expected to be an ongoing multi-year contract with one of the largest insurance companies in the world. And during COVID, they essentially stopped working using contractors. And all of that work where we were supposed to visit their offices and work with their executives, none of that happened in person. That all shifted online. And I would argue that probably hindered some of the relationship building. You can build relationships through the computer, but I think it's slightly more difficult to do. So long way of saying it, I think it impacted our large business, commercial business in terms of taking a hit to revenue. I think by contrast, the government business remains more stable during that time. And the small and mid-sized companies that are more akin and apt to be able to pivot and take on the work from home, work from anywhere model. Many of them already were working that way, ourselves included. We're geographically distributed, Washington State, Texas, Louisiana. And so for us, for our own operation, it really wasn't a philosophical or intellectual leap at all. We were already using Zoom, Teams on a daily basis. But for our customers, it was something that we were able to help advise them on. This is how we do it. You can follow this model, and things like that. I would also argue that, COVID has many different effects that I don't know that we have had enough runway and time to look back and analyze all the data, so to speak. But as you know, COVID has had some isolation effects on people, maybe exacerbated some mental health issues, physical, perhaps even physical health. connection with people, I think has happened in different ways. There's pros and cons to it. In some ways, people have made decisions in COVID to reevaluate how they spend their time, where they want to live, and various things like that. So we've had people move that really didn't affect us because, again, that was our operating model. But in terms of, morale and isolation and things like that, I believe that has impacted people, but I cannot quantify or show a direct correlation to the business. But I believe there's an effect that we'll maybe see in hindsight when we go forward a year or two.
Good, good. Got a question from Hassan in there. And he said, you mentioned earlier the struggles when you started your business. And the question is, how were you able to motivate yourself to keep going and not, as some of us say, return back to that corporate life?
Oh, that's a great question. I really love that question.
Thank you, Hassan.
And I want to be transparent about that. And I think this is a message to entrepreneurs. You will have a point where you think, I don't want to do this anymore, or maybe I should give up, or some variation of that. And what I have drawn on just about everything that I know how to at various times. Some of it's my faith and prayer, meditation. I also like to listen to motivational speakers, and not all of them, but certain ones really I find speak to me and speak truth to me in terms of motivation, keeping going, not giving up. And many times, just when I would feel a little discouraged, that right message would come just right in that nick of time. I will also say my family has been immensely important to me, both from a moral, spiritual, motivational, even in terms of providing some investment. The family has been hugely important to me to provide a rock solid foundation under me. And I would say, one of the things that I really like from a wise person and a philosopher and a motivational speaker, he said, try to visualize what your dream is. Meditate about it, think on it. And I'm closing my eyes because I'm thinking about it right now, and to really visualize that in its full essence, in terms of what you would be wearing, what you would be thinking, what you will be saying, what you will be doing, how exactly this vision of yours will come to life, and really imagine it down to its excruciating detail and become a part of it and think on that daily. And if you're able to do that, you can materialize that in your life. And I've done that as well, and seen that work.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. We've got another question in the box now, and from Jennifer. And her question is there one thing that you can think of that most people overlook when starting their own business that could make or break or even slow down their potential to be successful? Jennifer, thank you for that question. So again, can you think of one thing or two that people often overlook when starting their own business that could either make or even slow down their potential to be successful?
I'll try to think of two, because the first one that comes to mind is one that I've already touched on, but I'll try to talk about it in a slightly different way. And that is, it's both a positive thing and a negative thing. Most people, I don't know. My perception is that most people that start businesses are optimists. And I think when you start a business, it's great to be optimistic because that's what enables you to start it in the first place.
Mhm.
I find it hard to imagine how many people would start a business without having some optimism. But that same optimism, if it's too much, can be sort of construed as naivete, right? And or some form of irrational exuberance, right? and what I would say is, it's the kind of thing where, you know, people might think, well, if I create an online store selling clothing, that, you know, when I put up that store, people are going to come to it and start buying.
Mhm.
Not really. Not really. You need to get people to know it. You've got to socialize it. You've got to advertise it, promote it. There's got to be some quality, some value, some brand associated with it. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. So I think many people go in thinking there's some hard work to be done, but not really appreciating just how hard that hard work really is.
Mhm.
And so I would say that's one of the keys. What else do people overlook?
Yeah, how does it affect your motivation? You know, when you're there and you're thinking about what could they even slow it down from your success? You talked about that, the family and all, but were there, and I'll switch it around, were there factors during these 5 years that slowed you down and just said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore?
So there's a couple things. Okay, that brings up a couple things. One, in terms of, you know, when you take on employees are people, right? And as anyone knows, working with people, you have personalities, people have lives, so they have things that impact their lives. And when you're an employer, you have a responsibility
Mhm.
to those employees. And that's something that, you know, it requires a different skill set.
Yes.
It's not a matter of being a good engineer or a great designer, or, you know, whatever your product or service may be. It's not about that functional skill. It's about, how do you relate to people? Do you listen? Are you consistent? And various things like that. Sometimes employees might be unreasonable. You have to deal with that. And so that's something that can be frustrating and challenging for employees. I'm sorry, for employers, for business owners, especially when you have other work and things that you want to get done, and then you have personnel challenges. So that's another aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another quick question in here too, and Brian brought this up.
Okay.
If you're married and you've got children, and I can understand that, you know where we're going, how has their presence affected your motivation and ambition, as well as drive to start your business? And are they involved in your business at all?
Excellent question. I had not thought about it as much prior to starting the business.
Mhm.
But immediately after starting the business, I realized what a great communication mechanism it is for my sons in particular, who are teenagers, and I have a daughter also who's elementary school age. And for my sons, right from the start, they would help me carry things to the office. They helped me configure a router. They helped me, and, you know, I would give them assignments and they would be very excited to participate in those things. One of them has done some Python coding writing software for those that aren't familiar. That's a software programming language. So it's been very educational. And there's so many lessons in business, in moral, in stamina, in determination, in just seeing something grow, having them come to an office and see, oh, before there was only one chair in here. Now there's a whiteboard, dry erase board. Oh, you have 3 monitors now. Oh, there's this employee that works here now. Oh, I see you on Zoom. What are you working on these days? What's happening? So there's so many instructional moments. Yes, they are involved at times pretty significantly, at others not as much, but in terms of talking with them, lessons, life lessons, and other things, it's just it's a really beautiful thing.
That's great. That is great to hear. Great to hear. Julian's got a question in here too.
Okay.
Regarding Howard County.
Yeah.
Could you speak to any pros and cons that you've had starting your company here in Howard County? Any caveats that finding tech talent can be very difficult in this area. So what pros or cons have you had in starting your business 5 years ago up to the present here in Howard County? Let's start with the pros.
I don't think there are. I was struggling on the cons, actually.
Okay.
Howard County is probably one of the best places in the country, if not the world, to be able to start a business. I say that because there are a lot of resources in Howard County. We're in the Howard County Maryland Innovation Center. We're a part of the Ujamaa Business Roundtable, which you can see right behind Nat, which is a fantastic resource for networking, sharing business ideas with other entrepreneurs, and so on. We are engaged with Howard County. We get to, I don't know if I can say, Nat is also involved with the EEO of Howard County, and we connect with them. And so there are just so many resources in Howard County. It's also centrally located between 2 major metropolitan areas of Baltimore and Washington, D.C. It's near an airport. It's not to mention all just the environmental aspects of how clean it is, how the transportation is great, the library system, one of the best, if not the best in the country. So the list goes on and on and on. Really, it's a magnificent place to start a business. As far as tech talent goes, is it hard to find tech talent here? I don't know if I would say that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's competition for the talent because there are others also that want that talent, but there's a lot of tech talent here. One of the things, and I don't mean this in any disparaging way, but I think if you live in Howard County or grew up in Howard County, it's really easy to see how great it is when you go somewhere else.
I agree. I totally agree with that, Frederick. I really do. If I may just add to that a little bit, if I may, as the moderator here, with my own business and with the roundtable, I totally agree that this is centrally located. And I think really it's one of the best kept secrets that's out there when you start looking at the tech talent. And you mentioned that with your sons getting involved.
Right.
And I always tell our entrepreneurs out there, sometimes look in your own shop, look in your own family and how you can develop that tech talent. Doesn't always have to be present there, but you can develop that talent. And from a very young age now, you got people, I think, Howard County school systems and all are teaching young people how to code and all at a very young age. So I would say to Julian out there, yes, it can be different, maybe finding that upper level tech talent, But when you're in a growing business, you can find that talent that can be developed and really customized to your particular line of business or your particular form of business that you're in, if it's in a tech arena. And then the other piece that I would say too, that one thing that I'm passionate about and that I'm sharing with our business roundtable is to look at that tech talent now that's going into our returning citizens. And that's something in terms of a workforce out there, they're teaching our returning citizens that tech startups also. So when you're looking at that talent, open up the mindset and you can really start seeing potential opportunities out there. I know there's programs now at Fort Meade where they're going into the high schools and recruiting the young tech talent like your sons to do all the cybersecurity, because guess what? These hackers out here are not my age and not your age in a lot of cases, Frederick. They're a lot younger because
Oh, yeah.
guess what?
Okay.
And I know you probably agree with me.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So think about that when you're going in there. Let me get to, Richard had a question that we want to highlight on and get your perspective on. What's your philosophy on startups effectively prospecting and the importance of building a robust pipeline? So what's your philosophy on startups effectively prospecting and the importance of building a robust pipeline?
Philosophy. So philosophy is a robust pipeline is essential. That kind of goes without, maybe it doesn't go without saying, but a robust pipeline is essential and it requires consistent work. And consistent work consists of identifying those target areas, having some focus on what product or service you're offering, and really try to hone in on that, refine it, make it an offering that is desirable to the target market, something that your customers really want and value, right? So if you're able to define that and provide that product and service to that market, and continue to promote that, and that will also help to develop that pipeline of opportunities. One wise person once said to me that there are 3 important aspects to nurturing that pipeline. And that is, number 1, to see the people. Number 2, see the people. And number 3, see the people.
See
right?
the people.
So basically, you've got to get out there. Now, when there's COVID and other things like that, people can only, you might be restricted to how you see the people. But this forum that we're doing now, that would be some form of seeing the people, right? Connecting with, communicating with, being able to share your value proposition or whatever it is that your customer base would be interested in.
Great. We got a few more minutes, Frederick, and I really want to maybe ask these 2 questions, really.
All right.
One, what do you, as you look at your business now, what are some of the trends that you see out there? You talked about the future and all. What are some of the trends you see in your line of business that's out there?
Yeah, great question. There's a huge emphasis, which is great, I think, on compliance and cybersecurity. So when you see some of the messaging coming out of our company on social media or on our website, you'll start to see more and more about 2 things. Protecting data, protecting information, protecting against hacking, protecting against viruses, phishing schemes where nefarious people try to get your information. So all that cyber protection. And also, now the world produces so much data from using information technology that using that data to gain insights into business, using artificial intelligence, making predictive analysis, and using ways to using data analytics in various areas. It could be for business intelligence. It could be for strategy development. It can also be for analyzing cyber threats. So those two things are huge. Those are very big focus areas for us, things that we are, I would argue, excellent at, and that we try to bring to the marketplace in a highly competitive way.
Great, great. Another question really that's probably going to wrap this up a little bit. And again, I want to thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic in terms of your insight and all.
Thank you.
What words of wisdom or knowledge would you want to pass on to our present and future business owners? I don't know where our chat has either present or future business owners, but what words of wisdom would you want to pass on to our audience tonight?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of things. Number one, so this is to business owners or to future business owners. Do something that you enjoy, right? Because as I mentioned, you feel the ups and the downs more when you're in it. And so when you're doing something you enjoy, you're much more able to endure the downs or the bumps when you incur those. The second thing I would say is definitely do that visualization. Picture in your mind, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like in excruciating detail, and live it and enjoy it in your mind and make that a reality. I would also recommend, try to fill a need, right? Think about not only what you like and love and so on, but is it something that there's some commercial value to, something that someone would buy so that you can have a sustainable business? And also I would say, try to start with a client, test it out, or get some feedback from someone that you know would be an early customer, so you can get off the ground and not feel like you're struggling right from the start. And then finally, I would say, don't quit. It sounds like a cliche, but you'll at some point reach some time where you'll think about it, and don't quit. Don't let yourself get down for long, and keep on going. Someone said to me this year, it was another business owner, and they said, you sometimes feel like you're dead, your business is dead, you're not dead. You keep going, later time, you feel like you're dead, you're not dead. And that was the thing, just keep on going, don't give up, persevere. If it's really something that you like and enjoy, you believe in, don't quit.
And I would add to that, Fred, thank you so much. It's one of the things that you say, don't quit, is surround yourself with people who are going to always feed that positive energy and that positive thoughts to you.
That's great. That's something I left out, and that is enormous. In the Innovation Center here where we are, there's a community of entrepreneurs, the Ujamaa Business Roundtable, community of entrepreneurs, supportive, I mentioned family. Get people around you that will supply you with positive reinforcement energy. Absolutely, Nat, I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah, I always say that. I mean, as you guys know, on the roundtable, this coming December will be 22 years for me being in business. And it's a long game. And it's not a smooth road, as you mentioned. It's some ups and downs, but you got to keep going. You've got to keep going. You got to keep going. And what you said, keep going. I had a guy that I met several years ago, and he was a boxer. And he said one of the things that he was taught, to keep pounding, keep pounding, keep pounding. So it's a long game, folks. When you're looking at an entrepreneurship, it's something that you're going to learn. And I think, Fred, you hit it on the nose. Things are always evolving, and we've got to stay abreast and stay ahead of that game. You're in an industry that's constantly changing all the time. And you got to be aware of those constant changes. And I think that's the other piece that we as business entrepreneurs we have got to be adaptable to that change, that evolutionary change that's going on every day, every month, every year. Things are changing. And this pandemic, if you probably would agree with me, has even accelerated that change. So,
100% I agree.
yeah. So any closing remarks for you?
I'll just say thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed all the wonderful questions that came from the participants. Nat, thank you. Always a pleasure talking with you. And thanks again to the Howard County Library System for allowing me to be a part of this first roundtable series of the season.
Well, we thank you. And again, I want to thank Nancy, again, the Howard County Library System for allowing us to have this joint partnership together to highlight our business showcase here. And as Nancy mentioned, every fourth Tuesday of the month, we will still have another person in here. We've got a husband and wife team. So I'm going to wet the whistle a little bit and say, stay tuned for that particular show. We're going to showcase a business of a husband and wife, and you'll be getting that information from Nancy as well as myself. And again, Frederick, thank you on the behalf of the Ujamaa Business Roundtable and the Howard County Library System, and to all of our participants tonight in this webinar. You look at the chat, you've seen Frederick's business there, you've seen the library, support the library, please also support them. And if you're interested in getting more information on the Business Roundtable, please look at our website, and we're more than happy to share with you our goals, objectives, and mission. So looking at the chat again, I'm going to see, do we have any more questions in there? I think not. And again, we thank you all. Nancy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Nat. We want to thank Frederick for being our roundtable guest tonight and sharing his story. We also want to thank Nat and the Ujamaa Business Roundtable for partnering with us to bring you the stories behind local businesses and hopefully inspire you to start or grow your own business. And our lessons from tonight: don't give up, visualize your dreams, and make those dreams a reality. As Nat said, we'll be back on the fourth Tuesday in October, which is October 25th. And we will see you then. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you all.